All right, all right. It is almost 6:30. I think it's 6:29. So we're going to go ahead and get ready and get started. So I sent in the weekly email 2 weeks ago and also announced on Sunday that tonight we would actually be having a Honduras update. So if you have your notebook for Revelation, please know that we will pick that up next week, okay? If I remember right, you correct me if I'm wrong, please. If I remember right, we were in chapter 20. We made it about halfway through, and we're picking up at the great white throne judgment. Our granddaughter turns 3 Friday, and she calls us Grandma and Granddaddy. So I say that back to her a lot, and we hope she never changes. She's 30 years old, we hope she's saying Grandma and Granddaddy. So when I say something that sounds like that, I tend to say Gua. So forgive me for that. But I'm speaking my granddaughter's language. But we're going to go through Honduras. I didn't want to, if we had a little time at the end, I didn't want to start with the rest of chapter 20 because it's all on the great white throne judgment. And I didn't want to get part of the way into it and then pick up in the middle of a topic. So I'm just going to wait till next week, and we will complete chapter 20 next week, going through the great white throne judgment. I have up here with me 3 of those that I went with to Honduras. We have one more team member that traveled with us that, due to work, is not able to be here tonight. He's in Texas, so be praying for Alan Wheeler as he continues to work there and be back this weekend. But he wanted you to know that if you ever consider going on a trip, this would definitely be one to consider going on. He said he absolutely loved it. Not just the experience of hanging out with this wonderful team, but doing the ministry there on the ground. It was a really, really great experience. That was his first mission trip. And he was asked, would you ever go again? He said, absolutely, sign me up. So it was a fantastic trip. Tell you a little more about it in a second. First, I'm going to let them just introduce themselves. They'll introduce themselves. I'm going to go over a couple of announcements. I'll pray, and then we'll go through our trip and give you an opportunity to ask questions if you want to ask some questions. So we'll go from your right to your left.
Hello, I'm Ethan Sackett.
And Ethan, if you don't know, is the son of another team member, and Dad is back there, and I believe he taught for me on a Wednesday when I was gone, Gary Sackett. So we're glad to have the Sacketts with us, and this is actually Ethan's second trip. And there's some things you're going to learn about Ethan that you didn't know when we go through the trip, which I think you'll be really excited to learn.
Hi, I'm Clint Watkins. And there's some things you might not know about your pastor that you will learn on this trip. We called it the Get to Know Your Pastor Week when Ethan first went, and he was very excited to learn some things about his pastor.
I think I spoke with you before. I am Ruth Sackett, and I was the Peace Corps volunteer there from 82 to 84. So last time I went, I saw my side of the country, and this time I went to the other side. So the 7-hour trip up to the mountain was a little bit more than what I was used to, but still just lovely people to work with.
And if you didn't know, Clint is the responsible. God has used Clint with helping us connect with the church, the pastor, the church, and the people out in the area that we serve in when we go to Honduras. Clint he'll tell you more about it during the thing, but he is the one that God has used to open up the door for Emmanuel to be a longtime partner now with the church. What some may not know is there's a church over there that you'll see. Emmanuel actually sent the funds over, and Clint went over with some and actually built that church. So without the support of Emmanuel, the church wouldn't even exist today. So we're certainly grateful for what God's done in and through the vision that he laid on Clint's heart to make a difference there. Before we continue and actually get into the trip itself, let me give you a couple of quick announcements. You got to cut it on first, Sean. While I'm turning it on, if you're online, thank you for being with us tonight. The format is a little different, but we're certainly glad you're here. Flourish, ladies, coming up March 26th. If you have not been involved in a Flourish event, my wife was there last month, and she, I think, plans to be there again this month. Said it's a great event. She really loved her time there, so I encourage you to be a part of that. Johnny W. Most of you already have an idea who he is. The event will be here before you know it, April 5th. If you don't have a ticket, I encourage you to get one quickly. But I would ask you, those of you that are here, very likely love Jesus, to come out in the middle of the week for a Bible study on the book of Revelation. Not everybody will do that. It's usually those who want to dig in a little deeper into the end time things that would do that, and that's usually people who love Jesus. I would hope that you would consider this event, but not just for you. This is meant to be an outreach event. Oftentimes, we can invite folks to church over and over again, and they just might not come on Sunday morning to hear a pastor preach. But if you tell them there's a funny comedian going to be at the church, they're very likely to consider that, maybe more quickly than they would come on a Sunday morning. And in the comedy, Johnny's going to present the gospel as well, and there'll be an opportunity for people to trust Christ. So please consider not only coming, but get an extra ticket or two. If your neighbor is a full family, get 5, however many's in the family, and encourage them to come with you. And bribe them if you have to. Now, hold on. What I mean by that is, take them to supper first, and then after supper, bring them here. Or after the event, say, I'd love to take you out to ice cream afterwards, or for pie or coffee, whatever it is that you would enjoy. That's what I meant by bribe. I'm not telling you to fork out a bunch of money and pay them to come. I'm talking about getting them a meal before or some dessert after or something like that. And if we will make a concerted effort for those that we know that don't yet know Christ, it's more likely that they would actually attend. Rather, if we just said, hey, there's going to be a cool guy at the church, you should go see it. If we bring them with us, they're more likely to come. God uses people to reach people. So this is an event that could help us do that. Missions giving, this is a missions giving month. If the Lord lays it on your heart to give a little over what you would normally give and put it toward missions, please do so, and know that every dollar that you give toward missions will go as it is explained on that slide. 50% to our cooperative program that helps keep missionaries around the globe. We're in a large number of companies through our cooperative effort. And then 10% divided through the 5 countries that we actually have boots on the ground. So 10% of what you give would actually go toward our future efforts in Honduras, as well as the other countries. Now, be praying about Niger, and also be praying about India. We were not able to put boots on the ground in the fall last year at India, or in the new year this year in Niger, because there's some animosity going on in both countries where we're involved, but we are still sending support to the work that's being done by the nationals that live there. Be praying for both of those. Yakuba and his family, as well as in Niger, as well as Dr. Babu and his family, they're in the jungles of India, because they're both in areas that are going through some challenging times today. And that's why we're not boots on the ground at the moment in those 2 countries, because we're not allowed in at the moment. So be praying those doors would open back up as well. Mark Lowry, he needs no explanation. I think in church circles we know who he is. Be a fantastic night of worship, and he's pretty funny himself. In the midst of the worship, there'll be lots of comedy just because that's who he is. I don't know if all of you know it, but he started out as a comedian. Before he was a part of the Gaithers, he was when I was in youth ministry once upon a time ago as a young pup in ministry. Mark Lowry, remember those things they called them VHSs? We played them in our homes. I had a VHS of Mark Lowry doing comedy. Really funny guy. So it'd be a great, great night. And those tickets you actually have to buy online through the group that's bringing them here. If you need help, though, you can call the office and we can help you with that. Celebrate Recovery, Thursdays at 6. If you've got some hurts, habits, or hang-ups and would like to be around folks that also have some of those and readily acknowledge that, feel free to come and be a part of that in your journey. God will use that to help change your life. If you know someone that's struggling a little bit, feel free to recommend our Celebrate Recovery. It's a great opportunity for them to connect with some like-minded folks who love Jesus and are walking well in their recovery. So consider that. Parents' Night Out, this is something new that Lori and her team are putting together, and that's a date night for parents at no expense. Now, if you go out on the date, you have to pay for your meal or wherever you go. But as far as your children to be taken care of, you can drop them off here at 6 o'clock, pick them up at 8:30 after you go out and have some fun together as a couple. Sometimes we have grandparents that are raising grandkids. You can also take advantage of that if you'd like to. You can drop them off here and then go out and have a nice date night and know that they'll be taken care of here at no charge. I think there'll be fun, games, and pizza, as well as a Bible lesson throughout the fun and games. So it'll be a safe space for them so that you can go out and enjoy. Now, what we need you to do, if you want to take advantage of that, is let them know ahead of time in the office that you'll be here, and let them know, what age children and how many children that you're going to drop off, so that we make sure we have adequate amount of care here for them. And if you're watching online and you're in the area, that's available for you as well. Just need to let us know in the office. And finally, here is the team. That's Alan in the very front with the blue backpack on that couldn't be with us tonight, and then you see us there. The gentleman in the picture is the son of the family that Ruth lived with in the, you said 80s, right? Early 80s? In the 80s. And tell them a little bit about the family real quick before we go.
Okay, I was placed with the Comité Evangélico de Desarrollo y Emergencia Nacional, a development agency that was formed in the 70s. And Peace Corps just asked me if I wanted to be in a place with lots of rocks, but the people were great. And I said, yep, I'm on it. And so Jose was our chauffeur, and he was just a little pup when I knew him. Francisco and Jose were just wonderful. I mean, I spent most of my days traveling with Francisco, and Lourdes taught, and now she's retired.
Awesome. And you'll learn a little more about all aspects of the trip, including the travel. So Jose graciously picked us up at the airport, drove us about 7 to 8 hours to a little place where we stayed overnight, and then got up. And the pastor from the river, Pastor Felix, that you'll also meet in some of the pictures, he drove 7 to 8 hours, met us there, picked us up. Then we went from Jose's truck to his truck, and then went the 7 to 8 hours out into the river. So overall, it was about a 15 or 16-hour journey to the river, and Jose did the first leg of it for us. He also met us back in that city on our way back. So Pastor Felix took us to that city. Then we got in Jose's truck the next morning and went back to the airport. So he was a godsend to us. His driving might be questionable to some. You might hear more about that as we go through, but he did a great job. We were glad to have him. So this is the truck. Pastor Felix takes us in, and it's a little bit smaller in the front, so most of us were in the back. And if you notice, there are chairs in there, and there are also chairs on the roof, because after a while we decided to put some chairs up top so we could just lay a mat down and lay, because the roads are pretty tough to travel on and bouncing around. I think we cracked a chair or two. It was just a little more comfortable to lay down. So that was kind of our travel. And there's really not a lot to do other than just sleep or bump around or whatever while we travel. A little challenging, but very worth it, you'll see. And these, y'all please, if you want to say something about anything as we go, but there's a lot of pictures, so I'm going to move quickly. On the way out, we stopped by a grocery store, because once we get out there, there's really not a lot of shopping you can do, not a lot of places other than a little spot on the river you might could go get a soda and a bag of chips. Outside of that, when we were headed out to the river, we went shopping. And some of us rest while others shop. And you say, why? Because several hours in the back of a truck, and I'm telling you, it was hot. When we left Oklahoma City, it was about 50 degrees, I think. And when we landed, it was close to 90 degrees, or right around 90. And the humidity factor was probably double that, if you will. I mean, it was just about as high as it could be. If you remember, when we came back, most of us had really red faces. That was because of how hot it was. And you say, how could you be tired if you were just headed out there? I'm telling you, the travel's tough. But it is worth it. It is worth it. This is some more of the travel. This is more of what the roads look like on the second day of travel as we get closer to the river. And this is what the last leg of the travel looks like. We actually get to a boat, and then we go. And this is a video, I think, so I'm going to be quiet and let it play.
Hello. Pastor. Hello, hello. Here we are on the Rio Patuca. At long last, we are heading to the church. Finally, after about 16 hours of travel. Now we're on our last little bit of travel, heading up the river from Isai's house to a friend of the church where we drove into, put a new road in there. We're heading up the river to the church where we're going to do some work this week.
So if you didn't hear all of that, that's called the
Rio Patuca. So the Patuca River.
And you said something about Isai. Who is he?
So we were heading up. We ended up going to Isai's house, who is a friend of the church. He's a rancher there, and that's who Felix initially has lived with for the last 7 years. And so they were kind of partners, and that's the life that Felix is leaving to go to the church. So he's a cattle rancher, and he was called to this about a year ago, and he called me about it, and wanted to know what I thought. And I said, sounds like you're getting the call, dude. And he's like, yeah, I don't really want to be a pastor of a church in the middle of nowhere. And I said, I don't think God cares. And so a year later, he finally agreed, and he's now, but he's really enjoying the change of lifestyle, because it was go, go, go all the time. And it's the same now, but he kind of has his own space. And the first time we went, we stayed with Isai and their family in the house, and there were guys in and out of there all day and all night. And Felix and his wife actually helped cook for all these workers and us. Mm-hmm. But anyway, so yeah, this is the Rio Patuca, and it's a river that flows all the way out to the Caribbean Sea and goes way up north into Honduras.
And it's actually beautiful. There's really not much out there, but it is beautiful. That is Alan standing at the top of the river where we actually got off the boat and headed up to go to the church. And the river is a little bit low right now just because of the season that it's in. The last time we were there, the river was much higher. So the church is a good ways up the mountain. You probably, if you remember the last thing you saw us carrying bricks up the hill, it was even higher this time because the river was lower. But it's a beautiful spot. This was the place we stayed. So that was Alan's place to stay. That was where Ethan and his mom stayed. That was where I stayed. Somebody said, Sean, I saw your space. That was a bigger tent. I just shop smarter, I guess. I don't know. We took our own tent, so that's just what I ended up with. This is how we started each morning. We started with coffee, El Cafe, or Cafe, El Cafe. Is that right, Ruth? Ruth's a Spanish teacher, so I'll make sure I get it right. I don't know a ton of Spanish, but I do know how to ask for food. And I do know El Baño. If you don't know Spanish, that's restroom. Or ¿Dónde está el baño? That's where's the restroom. Or ¿Dónde está la comida? That's where's the food. Those are two things that are very important, at least for me when I travel. So I made sure I knew that. So we started every morning with coffee. and also devotional. So you'll also often see pictures of us with a coffee cup or a Bible, or sometimes our phone. We would have our Bible on our phone, where we would sit around and start each day with a nice beverage, hot beverage, and also a devotional time. And sometimes we cooked, or Ethan did. That's Ethan, and that is the kitchen, if you're wondering. It is outdoors. If you look behind Ruth, that is where the pastor and his wife and son live, on half of the side of the little modest building there that we call a parsonage, and the other half of the little space is where they they store some things. And then if you walk out of the parsonage, you walk out into a covered space where there's a kitchen area, and then on the left and right of the kitchen area, there was nothing, and you'll see that in a moment, but we covered that. That was part of the job while we were there, to cover all that, and you'll see more of that as we go. And that's breakfast. I think that's rice, eggs, and fried fish. And yes, that is the full fish, head and all. Now, I didn't eat the head of the fish, but the fish was actually really good. I think it was tilapia or something like tilapia.
It's similar, yeah.
Similar to tilapia, if you've ever eaten it. But it really was good. This is washing clothes. So that place where Alan is washing a pair of pants is also the water there to his right is where you would dip into if you need to wash your hands, or you would dip into if you need to wash your clothes, or you would dip into if you need water to cook with, or if you need to wash dishes. It's all done right there. And to his left, those cinder blocks, on the other side of the cinder blocks is a shower, which basically is a little tub of water that feeds from that piece of water into there, and you dip your bowl in it and dump it over you, and then lather up, and then dip it and wash off. On the other side, to his right, behind another set of cinder blocks, is the potty. So you just have to learn to be very close.
And you may be taking a shower and get extra water inside the shower just from time to time, because your pastor is throwing water over the wall. But he gets in trouble from the owner, from the real pastor there.
The real pastor there, I love it. So that water is ice cold. It comes off the mountain. It comes from a natural spring and feeds into there. Well, there's a little water hose, and you can't bend it or crinkle it. I didn't realize it'll actually put a hole in it. Well, it's just runs through a brick and just steadily feeds in there. Well, I knew Clint was in the shower. There's no top. And I thought, oh, that'd be funny. So I got the hose, and I leaned over, and I did it, and he's like, whoa, whoa, you know. And then the pastor came around, no, because he was afraid that I was going to tear the hose up. So I was really trying to be careful not to, but I understood what he was saying, because it's hard to come by materials out there. So I tried to behave after that. There were children all around throughout the week. The pastor has a son, and some that stayed and helped throughout the week, and then some of the church folk. So we regularly had children there where we were, and we tried to involve them or interact with them as much as we can. There was a keyboard donated that we actually were able to purchase when we got there. And Ruth plays and sings as well, so she did some basic keyboarding with some of the children throughout the week, each day, in the midst of the construction that she also was involved in, and she cooked and other things like that, which we all pitched in different areas. But that was something that she could do that we couldn't do. That was a great ministry to the children, as well as to Felix's wife. And I'm afraid I'm going to say her name wrong, so I'm going to ask you to pronounce it.
So that's Glynia there on the left, and then Ismarie and Daniela are the two girls, and they actually are neighbors. They live kind of back behind the church to the north of the church, and they came over quite often, and they took a lot of interest in the piano. So anyway, yeah, but Glynia. So her name is Glinda, actually, like we would have. My mom's name's Glinda, but they a lot of times have a kind of a nickname. But anyway, that's what she's called, Glynia.
And that's why I asked him to pronounce it, because I could remember Glenda but could not remember Glenia. This is, again, kids were all over throughout the week. It's a group of kids, and Clint is showing him a fancy shower. Now, what I mean, if you've ever been hiking, you can buy those like thick plastic water bags with the little shower head that comes out of it, so you can hang it up in the sun and it gets warm. So Alan took that so he could have a warm shower each night versus the cold mountain spring water that really is invigorating or just cold. And he was showing the kids because they had never seen anything like that. And we left that behind, and they rigged it up where it could be put in the little shower space in case somebody wanted to use it as a warm shower. Again, kids were everywhere throughout the week. At some point, they would show up. That hammock is one, since we extended the space, their outdoor space, we extended the covering of the space. We knew that it would likely need a hammock because that's just natural in that culture. So we took a hammock, and as soon as we put the space up, the hammock went up, and it was used quite often. Matter of fact, I spent my last night in that hammock. It was actually really good sleep. It got cool in the night in that hammock. Every night, we had a time of worship and also Bible study, where someone would share a devotional and we would worship. And because we were in Honduras around people who predominantly speak Spanish, we worshiped in Spanish. So we did all of our music in Spanish, and then we had the Spanish type and then the English under it. So for those of us that Spanish is not natural to us, we could still understand what we were actually singing, even though we were singing in Spanish. And it was, I remember one night, it was a little bit new for them in the sense that we did this on a nightly basis. And Pastor Felix said, "Do y'all do this at home?" And I said, "Well, Felix, just to be totally transparent with you, we don't always sit around at home every night and worship together and study the Scripture, although we might do it from time to time." I said, as a church, we usually meet on Wednesday nights and Sunday mornings, and sometimes outside of that for special occasions. I said, but every family's a little different. But when we go on a mission trip, since in the evenings there's not a lot to do that would take us away, instead of just sitting here, we want to take an opportunity to worship the Lord and also grow together on the trip, not just through the service, but also through the study of the Word together. So we did this each night. Oftentimes, before we built this top, that's actually toward the end of the week when we had the roof over, where we could hang a little light down. We would often use our cell phones for light so that we could worship even in a darker type setting. This is, again, the night worship. That's what you'll see, the completed project. We're calling this the hub, if you will, because after we did a couple of night revival, the church unloaded with the people that were there, and they all sat around under the completed project. I would call it an awning, but the extension of the roof. So that is their version of what you're sitting in tonight. That is where they congregate when they have a Bible study outside of the church building, or they sit around with a meal, or just hanging out together. So that would be equivalent to what you're sitting in now. Again, this is us. If you can tell, you can see a couple things really bright in spots. Those are cell phones people are using. Pastor Felix is the one the farthest in the center of the picture. See that little bright spot? That's his cell phone using so that he has enough light to read. So if you're watching online, a question was asked, do you have a generator there? So they actually have solar panels, and it'll come out a little bit later, but I'll go ahead and answer it. They have solar panels on top of the church, and they have a couple of batteries in the church that store that power. So at night, they're able to use a little light, but we don't want to rob all of their power, so we didn't use a ton of their light at night, but we did use enough so that we could see to get around, and then if we needed to, we use extra. Once we put their roof up, though, we had a couple of us had some like camping lights that you can charge, and then we hung those up almost like you would do at a campsite, and they also gave light. But they have some solar panels on top of the church, which you'll see in a video in a minute. Here's what it looked like when we got there, and this is some of the process of us working. If you notice, the middle part is jutted out. That's the kitchen. Behind the kitchen, we extended that, and on this side of the kitchen, we extended that, which you'll see the finished product soon. And this is just all the equipment that we would use. Notice that Alan is standing on a stump that we moved to use as a ladder. So obviously I'm holding and bracing him. So when he hammers, because it's not necessarily level and it wobbled, didn't want him to fall off. But what I love about the culture out on the river there is you just use whatever you have and make it work so that you can accomplish whatever you set out to do. There's no Lowe's down the street to go shopping at, or Walmart, or Atwoods, or whatever store. It's just not out there, so you use what you have and you make it work. This is just more of us working, putting the tin up to finish it up. The screw gun, obviously we took over with us, I think, Clint.
We bought it. Yeah, we actually bought it there in Catacamas. Yeah, the import tariff is pretty high. I made the mistake of taking a DeWalt bag a few years ago, and they spotted that, and they invited me to come into the back room at the airport and pay like $150 just to get the bag through. But another thing you'll notice is all this wood. Every piece of wood you see there did not come from a lumber yard even. That's all milled with chainsaws in the jungle just right up the hill. So every piece of that wood is actually harvested close by. And the posts that you see, we're actually using some used posts that Isai, the rancher we talked about, gave to us. And it's called Cortez, Madera Cortez, which is Cortez wood. And it's amazing. It's hard. It's kind of like our Osage orange or hedge apple that we have here. Really similar. It can be in the ground for years. But we had to buy the drill, one, to put screws in, and two, to pre-drill holes, because that's how hard the wood is. You have to pre-drill holes to be able to drive a nail in. And Alan was he was a framer years ago, and so he was our designated hammer wielder, since Pastor and I both have bum shoulders, and so we let him do all the hammer time, we called it.
And he did again, Alan, I can't go on how hard he worked. We called him he said he was a workhorse, not a show horse, because he just worked and worked and worked. Now, all of them really worked tirelessly. From sun up to sundown. Again, there's not a lot of work done after dark because there's not a lot of light, but from sun up to sundown. And we got up before the sun most mornings, and you'll see why. I missed it. Ethan, tell them about our neighbors to our tents.
Oh, yeah. So Clint is really wise in where he chooses to put his tent up. And I thought at first maybe it was just to get away from all this potential snoring. So he went up the hill into the forest area. My snoring, no one else. But then I realized it was also because we put our 3 tents right beside the chicken coop. And the roosters over there have no idea when the sun is rising or setting, so they're just going all the time.
I remember the first night, it must have been 2:30 in the morning, and they were just going off like it was sunrise. And I thought, Lord, please choke that rooster out. It was horrible. Horrible. Oh my goodness. And you would think after the first night we would have moved, but we didn't. We just trudged through it. But we did learn that if a guy's been over there for a number of years, we probably should follow him when he puts his tent up, that he probably knows something that we don't know. But yeah, those roosters were not fun. This is a shot on the left side. You saw earlier we were on the right side of the kitchen. This is the left side. And that concrete little spot under the awning that doesn't have the tin, that's where Alan was washing clothes earlier, where the restroom and the shower is. So they used to have to be exposed to the elements fully, and it rains during the rainy season. It rains often. Even the non-rainy season, it seemed like it rained every night because it would be so hot. We would have the sides of our tent open so wind could blow through. And usually between 2 and 3 in the morning, we would get a good rain shower, so we'd have to wake up soaking wet, close the tents, and then sweat to death until the rain left, then open the tents back up and get a little breeze. But they would normally have to go out and do anything by way of getting water for cooking, cleaning, or using the restroom or showering. They'd have to walk out into the rain to get to it, and then back through the rain to get back under the awning. So we were able to put that under the awning, which was a substantial help to the family. The bricks behind me are the bricks that we took up, some the last trip, some this trip, but we didn't take them all up. There were some Hondurans that also took some of the bricks up as well, which we were so thankful for, because that's probably the most difficult part of the trip, was taking those bricks from the base of the river up to the top. And I can't even imagine the folks that got them down to the river, because those bricks were taken toward Isai's house or somewhere like that and put in the little boat that you saw us in, and then brought down and then brought up. So that's just a lot of effort to get bricks from one place to the other. But those bricks are going to help us go back soon and build a school building, which you'll see in a video. So I don't want to ruin it yet. I'll let the video kind of explain a little bit about that, and then maybe Clint can fill in some of the gaps when we get there. You see Alan with a big chainsaw and me standing on boards. Clint said they carved the boards right out of trees. They were literally doing that up the mountain while we were working down the mountain, and then somebody would bring them down and then brought us a big chainsaw. So as we put them up, because we closed in one side of the kitchen so rain couldn't come in while she was cooking, so she could cook it when it's raining. So, and you'll see that, but to put that wall up, the wood that they had cut was just a little bit long in some places, so the only way to cut it was with this massive chainsaw, again, because the board is so thick and so tough that it takes that to cut through, and also because that's all we had to cut with. So we used a big chainsaw. So I'm just standing on it to keep it sturdy so that he can cut in the wood, not flop up and hit him. That's, again, cutting the wood. That's us getting ready to put the wood up, and then you see Alan actually hammering the boards in that'll cover that whole wall. He's on the left side of it, and he'll go all the way down to that first beam on the right, which would cover up the kitchen area, so when the rain comes from the way of the river, it won't hit them while they're in the kitchen area. And if it comes the other way, it would hit the back of the parsonage so they could still cook. It wouldn't affect them. That's what it looked like when we completed it. Really nice wall. It's actually really pretty wood. It's thick. Man, it was thick. It was heavy as well. Now, if you notice, that's the finished product. Left of the wall is where the restroom and all are under. If you see that green chair right behind it, that's the shower. And then keep going, and then there's the little water spot. Other side is where the restroom would be. Kitchen is behind the wall, and then on the right spot, you see that hammock. That's where those little children were sitting earlier, and now that's a covered spot, and that's where we were sitting under when we were worshiping at night, if you remember the picture we saw earlier. That's the completed project. That's Ethan and Alan lining off what you just saw completed. And that's Ethan resting because of the chickens and roosters, and also the little mat he had on, or that he had to sleep in his tent. I found out later in the week, because he didn't want to tell anybody, it kept losing air. So he kept waking up on the ground, and it's really hard to sleep on the ground if y'all haven't tried that in a long time. So he was getting some well-deserved rest. Now, I didn't put the video on there, but you heard him comment about snoring. We have proof that this thin guy can snore like an old bear. I'm telling you, he did well. I was proud of him. That's us working again, continuing to build. That's when we were bringing bricks up the mountain. What you don't see in the picture is Ruth, and she worked as hard or harder than we did. I'll brag on her for a second with the bringing up the bricks. So Ethan and Alan and I were down, and we did an assembly line. Ethan would bring it up the first leg, bring it to me. I would take it to Alan. Alan would take it to Ruth. She would take it, put it at a spot. And then at the end, we were going to get it from the spot and take it up to the top. Well, it got really hot, so we worked in about 10 to 15-minute sessions. Then we would go lay in the river for about 10 to 15 minutes. Then we would do another 10 to 15 minutes. We'd lay in the river. And Ruth needed some water. We said, just go up the mountain and get water. We'll just go down to the river. So we went down the river. She went up to get water, and we ended up staying a little longer. We didn't hear her, so we stayed a little longer. And then when we got up to go get the rest of the bricks, they were all gone. Because after getting her water, she decided to just move them. And she moved all but like 10 or 13 or something like that. So she worked probably harder than us, but I think she might be the one on the camera there. I'm not sure where she was at the moment. But that was, we were finishing bringing up bricks. Just more of the work. And as you see the laundry there, we did laundry very regularly because we didn't want to weigh down with a bunch of luggage because we traveled in the back of a truck. So we all just went with a backpack. So we just had like 2 pairs of clothes, and I wore stuff like this that can dry easy, and we would wear one day and wash one day type thing.
One interesting thing on that last slide that I almost found out by accident is that is barbed wire that they use. And who would have thought? It's just an easy way to keep your clothes from blowing off the clothesline. They just use barbed wire. But on an American, it's about right here is where it hits. And so walking around at night, you got to keep your head on a swivel.
You do have to keep your head on a swivel. And even when we were working, some like Clint are more skilled at this than I am. I'm just a guy, go pick that up and bring it to me when it comes to construction. So several times when they were measuring and figuring out what we needed, get tunnel vision and focused on what he was doing, which he needed to. So I would be the clothesline guy. I'd hold the clothesline back where it wouldn't catch him in the back of his neck when we were overworking in that area. So teamwork made the dream work over there, as they say, a true statement. Hafeth is the pastor's son, and man, he's just a joy to be around. Just a kid that loves life. You'll see in a moment a little plastic truck that cost just a few dollars that I threw in my backpack to take over with me. And it was one of the few toys that he had because he didn't have many. And that little truck, he tied a little rope to it, and he would literally pull it a ways off, fill it up with dirt, pull it back over here, and empty the dirt. And there's plenty of dirt here, but he would go back and get just so he could play. And he would do it for hours, and it would just be fun. It amazed me at how much they don't have, but how much they don't really need. It was just so cool to see. That's the finished product on the left side. And I don't know if you can see under there, but there's a lot of corn under there. We shucked corn for quite a while, and that was a snack. They roasted it over the fire, and then we ate corn. If you look right to the wall that we built, if you're facing the wall, look there to the left. There's kind of a light brown, looks like a shelf or table. That's actually a wood-burning stove that they made, and they feed wood into the side of it. So a couple times during the week, we ended up cutting wood so they could use that. This is the team, and Ethan, I'll let you give them a little bit of information about what y'all were doing when you went out on the hike.
Absolutely. So that one day we spent, Clint, Pastor Felix, and I went out and just going through the mountainous area, just passing out Bibles. So we put, I think, about 5 in each of our bags and passed those out because there's just houses kind of scattered throughout there. And it was about a 3-hour trek around there. And as we saw, people just gave them the Bible, and they were all really excited to receive that because most don't have that out there or access to the Word. So.
And obviously those Bibles are in Spanish. So I don't know if you saw it, but on the horse, the young man had his Bible and was opening up and looking in it. So it was a cool deal. They went out. The reason I didn't go on that particular trek is the last trip, they told us it would be 3 hours. Do you remember Gilligan's Island? A 3-hour tour, and it ended up being like an 8-hour tour. So we decided not to go this time, a couple of us, because of the 3-hour trek turned into about 8 hours. But this time they were able to do it in about 3 hours. Now, I think that was 3 hours one way and 3 hours back. So they were gone quite a while, but had a good experience.
Oh, I was just going to say, yeah, the last time, Sean's been on this walk before, and so poor Glenn went on it, and last year, I don't know if you talked about this, but, you know, Glenn's a pretty good-sized guy, and he has size 13 boots, but they don't have size 13 boots in Honduras. They have size 10 maybe, and so he did this walk. I don't know how many miles it was, but it was a good six hours, I think, and He just told me last week his toes are still black and blue from that walk, so it was pretty brutal. But anyway, yeah, we had a great time, and we saw a couple of I think probably 5-6 different places we stopped, I think. And Ethan's being kind. I had 3 Bibles, and he grabbed 7, which thank goodness, because we would have already run out. We ran into a lot more people than we thought, so it was awesome.
And if you don't remember, we went in September. So Glenn's toes are still blue from that trip. But again, take a size 13 and squeeze into a size 10. And you say, well, why did he wear the boots if they were that small? You couldn't do the walk without them. Now, they could this time because it wasn't rainy season. Last time it was rainy season. So almost in certain places, every step you would take, your feet would sink down. And if you were in regular shoes and pulled them up, the shoe would come off. So you had to have those big old galosh type work boots on, and it was just really hard for him. That's us back at the camp. Ruth is helping out with cooking there. That's me cutting wood, and I promise you I didn't cut long, or chopping wood, I didn't chop long. That is very hard wood. I grew up chopping wood. I don't have the shoulders I had when I was younger, but I also never hit wood like that. That is very tough wood. But that's what they used to feed that cooker, which is where they did cook a lot of the food. And they fuel that cooker around the clock. It never really goes out. They just keep putting wood in it. So when we weren't, there was a spell where there wasn't a lot going on. They were involved in more technical work that I'm not good at, so I just swung an axe to feel useful to get some wood done. This is the church that Emmanuel sent money over years ago to build. It's a block building with a tin roof, and up on top of that is where the solar panels are. If you notice on the other side, it looks like people are not really in their chairs, but leaning over the chairs. That's what they do before church. They don't come and sit and talk with each other a lot. They come and get on their knees and lean over their chairs and pray until the service starts. I remember when I walked in and sat down and I looked over and saw, and all the women sit on one side and all the men sit on one side. That's just kind of customary out in that area. But I remember walking in and seeing and looking, and most of the people were on their knees, just laying prostrate over the chair praying. And I felt a little guilty, just to be quite honest. I thought, man, I need to increase my prayer life. This is Clint sharing with Pastor Felix in one of the church services. This is Ethan. He preached his first sermon officially in Honduras. So we had kind of like a 2-night mini revival. I preached the first night, and then Ethan preached the second night. Clint gave some testimony one night, and Ruth led in some of the music, and then they had some Hondurans lead in some of the music as well. So it was a great experience to encourage the church there in the river. This is a little Hafeth just playing with a board. He's got a little piece of board and a rope, pulling it back and forth. And Clint was down there and took this picture. He was actually mimicking what they were getting ready to do. They were going to take the boat down the river and pick some stuff up and bring it back. So he was using that board like a boat. He would let it float down a little bit. He would put dirt or something on it, and then he would come back up, and then he would empty it, let it float back down, and do it again like the little truck. He was just making do with what he had. And the neat thing is, what he was doing was what he's seen his dad do with a big boat. He was doing with his little made-up boat. So he was learning from his father and kind of putting into practice what he sees his dad do, which just reminds us again that people mimic more of what we do than what we say. So we can tell people about Jesus all day long, which is important, but we also need to show them Jesus in the way that we live as well, so that our life and our lips match up. That's the little truck that I took. You see him, he'd go around the church, get dirt, bring it back over here and empty it. That's an aerial view before. That's an aerial view after. If you notice, the little restroom area is uncovered. If you notice, now it's covered. That was the completed project. That's from up a little ways toward where Clint was sleeping. If you look into the far left, you see our tents and that rooster chicken house above it, which we should have noticed when we got there. But anyhow, I'll admit I set my tent up first, and the rest of them followed me. So I didn't do a great job of leading. Here, there were some guys clearing out the mountain over the other side, and we asked Felix if he would mind touching base with them and see if they would allow us to come over and share. So I shared my testimony of faith in the Lord Jesus and what Jesus could do for them as well, and Ruth translated, and we're under a building finding some shade, and they had water, and they were so attentive and also so appreciative, and we also put Bibles in their hands. This is on the way back. This is the home where Ruth stayed the last time we were there, and that's the family that she stayed with that she used to live with, and they were able to, they treated us to a meal, and we spent some time with them. It was really blessing, especially after coming back from the river and being a little more in what we would call a civilized life, closer to what we live like. Really nice, sweet family. Good people, love Jesus. Another thing that we haven't mentioned that I love is now this family from the city is connected to a pastor out in the river, so they've also developed a little bit of a friendship too, which is neat, and we pray that God would increase and grow that as well. I don't know how that got in there, but that's what happens at the end of a trip. So here's a little bit of the vision of what happened and what we hope will happen in the future.
Hey, Emmanuel, Enid. We are here in Honduras.
Can y'all hear that? Is there a way to cut that up, Ronnie? Do you know?
It's low tide. The river's really low, so you can see it good from the church. Right down the hill. You'll remember we carried some bricks up the hill to make preparations to start building the school. Well, if you notice, the bricks are now up the hill. Now, we didn't bring them all up. We had some help from some of our Honduran friends, but we were able to get the bricks up. And sometime in the future, we hope to bring a team back to help actually build the school, and it'll go just over to the side of the parsonage. Now, if you look at the parsonage, if you'll remember, it was just this middle section, and it was wide open. But we've added a section to the right, and we've also added a section to the left, and we call that, in Emmanuel language, the hub. After revival the other night, it was packed with people sitting around, enjoying some food and some fellowship. We'll show you the inside momentarily, but just to give you a reminder, it's right beside the church, which is just to the right of the parsonage. And now let's go take a look inside of what we call the hub as we extended it.
Go.
So we were also able to acquire solar panels, and they're just up on top of the church, and they provide electricity for the church as well as the parsonage. You'll see some of the lights running down the outside of the church. There are also lights inside of the church. And then there are lights in what we're calling the hub now. You see one of the little children in one of the hammocks that we were also able to provide. We built this entire section, and then on the other side of the kitchen, we built that section as well, which extended the space for the family as well as for the church family when they have fellowships together. So just want to thank you again for all of your prayers and all of your support. And know that the work in Honduras is not done. So if the Lord is prompting you to give, go, or pray, please be obedient to His voice as we make plans to come back and build that school building. Thank you and God bless.
Tell them a little bit about school, real quick.
Okay, so one of the projects that we're working on is a school, and it's going to be located there close to the church. And we actually didn't mark out exactly where it was going, but it's going to be there fairly close. And that's what all those blocks are for. So it's not going to be a huge building, but maybe 16 by 24, something like that, for all these kids that are in the area. And what they do, they get together and they hire a teacher who comes and basically lives with the family, one family, and then they will all come and go to the school together. But it's kind of an interesting story. The church is located on a piece of land that was donated, about an acre, and the land beside it that you saw, like where the clothesline is not owned by the church, or maybe a little bit outside of that to the south. And the landowner not only wasn't very cooperative with the church, wouldn't help, and very wealthy, by the way. He wouldn't even let Felix walk across his land. And so we really need to bring a road through his land to the church for access and to bring materials, so we don't have to go through the river, up the road, or up the hill, and just to get access to the other, because there's lots of other people not on the river that are, accessed by roads, but there's no road to the church. It's only accessed by the river. So a year or so ago, that landowner passed away, and the new landowner, and we kind of think, this isn't an accident, but Felix went to visit him at least 3 times, and Felix said, hey, he had a Bible in his house. He should have known better. but in any case, the new landowner was kind of the opposite. So not only did he allow Felix to walk across the land, but he's donated room, and I don't know if we showed there's bean fields where he's raising beans, and corn fields where you guys went and picked corn, and that's all this other landowner's property. And he's just letting him use basically whatever he wants. And not only is he going to let him put a road in, but he's going to put the road in for him. So, and when I say him, I mean us. And so we're expecting that to happen actually in the next couple weeks. So the next trip, we will be able to bring in the supplies, not through the river and spending a lot of money with labor, but bring it in with the pickup. And then probably the next trip we'll have a pretty good work week for the school.
Normally we go on mission trips just because of having to take time off to go. We normally go to each country about once a year. It's very likely that in the summer, at the end of the summer, early fall, that we will try to take another team back to Honduras this year, because God opened the door with this new landowner to put that road in. That road will allow us to go back sooner to get that school building up, so hopefully it'll be in place by next school year, which would be in the fall. So be praying that road really would be cut in, the material could be there, and we could put a team of able people, some like me that have no skill in construction, they can just carry and move stuff, and then some like Clint who are actually able to do the necessary work for people like us to move stuff, so that we can get that school building up so those kids at the church and along the river can take advantage of being educated right there on the property. So there's one more video. It lasts about a minute, and then it'll be 7:30, and I'll close in prayer since it's 7:30. And if you have questions, we'll hang out a few minutes, and you can come ask us. That way those that need to leave can leave. But I learned that after, or I was reminded that after about a 7-8 hour truck ride, a night in a little hotel, another 7 or 8 hour truck ride, and it being over 90 degrees, and you're at least Ethan and I, lying down in the back of the truck, that sometimes you get a little delirious, especially when you get to the last stop and you can't find the hotel and you drive around an extra 30 minutes to try to find that. So to just let off a little bit of that delirium, Ethan and I just enjoyed ourselves for a moment. Let's see if I can get it to work. Oh, push the lawnmower. So we just decided to dance. That's just what you do.
We have some big problems here. We have some big problems. They've got too hot in the sun today, and 6 hours they've been in the back of the pickup. And the poor security guard has to watch these Americanos loco, ¿verdad? So we've been driving around Comayagua for about 30 minutes trying to find our hotel, which is this. So pretty slick. Pretty slick.
Now, what was even funnier is if you were there, there's no music. Now, for anybody but Ethan and me. So we had a long ride, and it was so hot. We were covered up, like cover over us, because the sun was just that blazing. So I had headphones on, and I realized that Ethan had nobody to talk to, and we're buried under stuff because of the sun. And I thought, well, maybe he wants to at least listen to music. So I elbowed him and said, "You want one of my earphones or whatever?" He said, "Yeah." So we're listening to we're actually dancing to music, and they're like, "What are they doing?" They're just delirious. There are great people all over the world, and God allowed us to partner with some great people along a river in a very rural place at the mountains that God's using to encourage a good number of families with the gospel of the Lord Jesus. And God let us invest in them relationally, as well as through some teaching and obviously through some building. Pray for Pastor Felix, for Glenia Hafeth, their son, like Japheth in the Bible, but J is silent in the Spanish language, so that's Hafeth. Pray for them, that God would continue to keep them encouraged so that they could continue the great work that they're doing along that river. And also ask God to continue to stir within us the desire to help them. Let me pray. Oh,
A couple more things real quick. The mission there is ongoing, and the need is ongoing. They have a functioning church, but you notice there were no windows, no doors, no ceramic on the floors. Their house has dirt floors. You'll see them sweeping the dirt on the floors. So there's a lot of stuff, a lot of needs still to be met. And we didn't even show, this is one of 3 churches that we're trying to help. There's one not too far away that is about the same state of construction that we've actually helped build. You've helped build as Emmanuel. And then there's one about 2.5 hours away that we would like to help, where the pastor of this church originally was called to go to. So just real quickly, that was kind of to know that there is years of work to do here. So.
Awesome. Let's pray together. Father, thank you for your goodness and your grace. Thank you for these tonight. I pray that you would continue to stir within our hearts the desire to make Jesus known across the street and around the world as you continue to open doors for us. Lord, we love you. We praise you. We lift up to you Pastor Felix, Glenia, Hafeth, and those that serve alongside them, even in those sister churches. And help us to be an encouragement to them from this day forward. In Jesus' name, amen. Hey, God loves you, and so do we. Hope you have a great night. If you have